live now. Hello and welcome to an evening with comrades, where tonight we have with us Theo.
Hi, I'm dead.
We also have with us Pac-Man.
He's dead too.
Well, everyone will be dead by the time I'm finished. Viva Positas.
We also have with us, I hope I'm saying this right, Königsmark?
Königsmark.
Yeah,
Königsmark.
Mark.
No,
King's
that's
money?
not an
King's dollar? I don't know.
I can't believe last
TK.
stream I called him Königsberg.
That's a
It's
town in
close
East
enough.
Russia.
Yeah, it's Kaliningrad now. Because nothing
Damn.
happened on the Eastern Front.
Nothing.
We also have with us, returning, Crypto.
He's dead too.
I almost Vesker Makarichin. It's been too long.
Yeah, he was dead.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
welcome,
I
Now
was
he's alive.
dead.
welcome to everybody on the stream. Welcome to everybody in the chat, and of course, first cab off the rank is to talk about what the fuck happened in the UK election and where it's gonna go now. So, Crypto, I think you have
Crypto.
a few words about this.
All right, Makarichin. Let's kick off the stream with a fucking bang. So, dear comrades, as most of you will probably know, the Conservatives were able to win a majority at the general election last night. A commanding majority, as a matter of fact. I forget exactly the amount of seats that they got, but it was over the
365.
half. 365?
Yep.
Yeah, that is a commanding majority. So now they are able to push through their policy without the need to consult the. Basically, most Tories are going to be able to push through any bill that their leader wants to do. And the thing is, because it's not a hung parliament, because the Tories command their majority, any policy that Boris Johnson wants to get through, he can get through. But, and obviously the big news of the night, and something that I had been predicting for a long, long time, is that Jeremy Corbyn fell flat on his fucking face. Labour lost a fuck ton of seats in one of the worst general elections in history. Now, it's and now let's. But there is a couple of silver linings to this select. The first being that Scotland returned 48 SNP MPs. And just a full context, there are 59 seats in Scotland, and 48 of those went to the SNP. The Conservatives got 6 seats, the Liberal Democrats got 3 seats, and Labour got 1 seat. And on top of that, in occupied Ireland, in the so-called Northern Ireland, Irish nationalists, the Republican parties, have now got a majority in the north as well. 3 out of the 4 seats available in Belfast, the capital city of occupied Ireland, are now held by Irish Republicans. Now, this is nothing short of seismic. This is 1918 levels of seismic. Now,
Yes.
the question is what I think a lot of people asking, where do we go from here? Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again, people put way too much faith into Corbyn. They were so determined in thinking that he was going to win and that everything was going to be okay. We wouldn't actually have to do any fucking legwork. We just had to get Corbyn in and then we could organise peacefully and hang up the gloves. No, that didn't fucking happen. What did happen? And the reason for this, the reason Corbyn lost, none of this bullshit about the whole country being racist. None of this bullshit about fucking, people didn't vote for Corbyn because they fucking love the Tories. No, the reason Corbyn lost was because he sat on the fence with Brexit right up until the last minute. He sat He sat on the fucking fence. He didn't call explicitly for remain, and he didn't call explicitly for leave. He was playing both sides of the fucking fence. He darted around questions relating to the European Union by saying, "Oh yeah, with the Labour government, then it's not really going to matter." He completely ignored calls for a federalised UK with more devolved powers to Scotland, or at the very least completely reshaping the whole UK from being a fucking this unequal partnership of nations to actually being a federal state. Completely ignored those calls, and also said that he would not permit a second independence referendum. No. That's why Corbyn lost. None of this bullshit about fucking, oh yeah, like the country just hated them. Like the smear campaign run by the right wing media in this country was effective. But the issue remains that Corbyn supporters, a bit like fucking, do you guys remember when Hillary Clinton lost the election? You had a bunch of people saying, "Oh, if you voted for Donald Trump, then you were a fucking racist, you're a piece of shit, you don't deserve to live." Like, it's complete batshit insane to accuse everybody who didn't vote for Corbyn as being someone who loves Tory. It's completely batshit insane to think that.
Also, important note: the reason why Corbyn lost wasn't because people voted for Tories. It was because of the Brexit party that have disrupted the traditional patterns in the north. There was a lot of people that were for Brexit party and didn't like Corbyn's non-policy on Brexit. And another thing, if people, some like high IQ people, would want to tell you that this was because Corbyn wasn't pro EU enough, look at the Liberal Democrats.
Exactly.
If people will try to say that Corbyn wasn't was left too much of a left winger or wasn't enough
the fact
for
that the English
the
are
EU.
racist is a completely unrelated fact.
Yeah, the fact that the English are racists come into Brexit, but that doesn't mean that Brexit doesn't come into the elections. It's like it's a chain reaction. It's not a big bubble.
I heard
Yeah.
people
Yeah, I mean,
talking about how Brexit split the base of the Labour Party because they had to keep Remainers and Leavers together in order to try to get Labour
there's
in.
this weird.
Yeah, and they didn't because
there's
you
this
can't.
really weird insistence in Anglophone politics to stick to decisions. Someone described it. Someone, I forget what server it was, described it as if they were trying to emulate democratic centralism, like parliamentary. Once a decision has been reached by some sort of popular voting, you always have to pretend to support it. You're not allowed to be against it. Being spineless is so deeply ingrained in English parliamentary politics that
Yeah, you are not even allowed to say that you will do it,
Yeah.
but if you think it's stupid, you have to
Yeah.
be like, I am for this, despite it being stupid because the people say it. It's a good idea.
And on top of that, this whole it irritated me seriously, the amount of anarchists who were fucking placing all their fucking faith in Corbyn. So-called anarchists who were placing their faith in Corbyn as though he was fucking God's gift to the green earth. He really, really fucking wasn't. And the whole thing is that the way that we talk about this as well, again, there is no democratic change happening in this country. There is no reform possible. We are in late stage capitalism. And I cannot stress this enough that the left in this country and in America need to get that through their head that in late stage capitalism, reform is impossible.
This is the reform.
There is no fucking reform going to happen in this country. There is no left-leaning candidate who is going to get elected.
I'm going to reveal a very sad fact. We all know this. They all know this. They cannot accept it. They will never accept it. Billions of people are going to die, and
Yeah, that's
I'll just say we don't want them to. We don't want people to die.
Yeah, it's an observation. It's not.
It's like UK politics are so incompetent
No,
But-
not just UK politics.
Oh yeah,
Um,
world politics is so
it's
incompetent that people are
different
gonna die.
issues in other places of the world, but
We have a question from OnlyBro555 who asks, "Do you guys think the Labour Party will split because of Brexit?"
no.
No.
No. What I think's going to happen, what I think's going to happen with
Pakistan.
Labour, what I think's going to happen with Labour is that Corbyn is gone. It's already been revealed that he's gone. And I'm gonna piss a lot of people off by saying this. He needed to fucking go. And he's gonna go. So it's gonna be up to basically who replaces him it's gonna be up to who replaces him to basically decide the future of the Labour Party. If it takes an increasingly Brexit
I
stance,
nominate his cat.
if it's gonna take an increasingly pro-Brexit stance, think about all the fucking young students from, again, I know quite a few international students, a lot of people from the European Union, who are so disappointed in Corbyn and like just the fact that and here's the thing, a lot of them even admitted he was a fucking closeted Brexiteer, but they still voted for and like the whole thing is that I think the really big question that we need to ask ourselves, because we can wax and relax on the results all we want, we can say why they happened, but the thing that is most important is deciding where do we go from here. And I would say we've got a pretty decent blueprint to go forward. This blueprint is that we back the Scottish independence movement and try and morph it as much as we can. We also back the movement to unify Ireland. And
Oh yeah.
and in England, comrades in England, if you are listening, you need to network, you need to organize, you need to stop trying this above ground act and saying and thinking that's all you need to do. You need to network. You need to network. You need to set up. You adapt a different organizational structure. You need to prepare for the worst, because the end of capitalism's coming. The worst is coming. The worst hasn't come yet. It's in the post. You need to prepare for it, because if you don't prepare for it, then more innocent people are going to die. More innocent people are going to freeze to death. More innocent people are going to fucking be starving around about Christmas.
I think it was
And
I think it was Lord Buckethead who said, if you have the Tories in power for Brexit, it'll be a complete shit show. Has the shit show
Yes.
begun because at this election, or is it just
it's
the icing on the crap?
starting.
begun.
I'd argue it's
Uh,
begun last election.
I would argue it began the election that they said it's either chaos with Miliband or stability with what was the guy?
Okay, but that's
The Labour guy.
Cameron.
the chicken or the egg. But
Yeah.
on a brighter
The
note,
the election that basically gave us the referendum about Brexit was the beginning
on
of
a-
the shit show.
yeah, on a brighter note, you see that bloated corpse there in the pond over there? The DUP, I think it was called.
Like I said, the DUP are. Well, I mean, they're not fucked. The DUP is still a very strong loyalist voice in Northern Ireland, and
Yeah,
I would also like to say, Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland and leader of the Scottish National Party, has said that she's not asking for permission to hold a second independence referendum. She's demanding it.
Oh shit!
Now,
Scottish
I
independence.
would like to now, because I made like somewhat of an accurate prediction for this election, I would like to make a couple more predictions if you guys are okay
I'll
with
tell you
that.
now, you're more accurate than a bunch of penguins in a zoo because the
Before
penguins
you do
predicted
that-
Corbyn to win.
Yeah.
before you do that, I want you to take a look at this group from the Young Conservatives and tell me what you notice about them.
Oh god, why?
Yeah. Where are the young people?
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, yeah, some
The
big-
spring
some
youth of
big
UK.
young men.
The youngest
But
one among
yes.
them looks like 30.
But yes, my predictions for the whole Scottish referendum. debacle are as follows. Nicola Sturgeon is going to ask for this referendum. What is going to happen is there's three possibilities that I have basically thought of. And the possibility that Boris Johnson grants it, the very unlikely possibility that he grants it, we have it, we go into it's all good. However, the most likely outcome of like Nicola Sturgeon asking for a second independence referendum is it's going to be met with a fat fucking no. There's three ways that this is going to go. The first being that the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon back and just don't do it. Given the fact they have officially been given a mandate at this election to hold a second independence referendum, that's not happening. That's the whole purpose of the SNP, is to get Scottish independence. The second possibility is that the SNP and the Scottish government will hold a referendum. Now, that can go many of two ways, but I think both the second and third option are going to go in roughly the same way. So I'm going to move on to the third option. And the third option, forgo the vote, we just declare independence. Now, the way this is going to go is the second option that has Boris Johnson refusing an independence referendum and then the SNP having one anyway, is there's various things that could they could just let it happen and then just say no, you're not happening, right? You're not getting, and or that, which is the more likely outcome, Boris Johnson will send the police or the army to stop it. A la Catalonia. Now, if that happens, you can bet your fucking bottom dollar that shit's gonna kick off. And the same with the third option, that like there's a chance that if we just declare independence, Boris Johnson will just fucking straight up send in the army.
You don't even need to
and-
speculate. All you need to do is look at Spain and the Catana referendum.
Exactly. And actually, there's a fourth option, and that is, let's say none of this happens. Let's say we get independence without a fucking hitch. Let's say we get a referendum and we get independence. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with Scottish loyalists, as in people who are loyal to the UK. They are fucking madmen. They are. When the No campaign won the independence referendum last time around 5 years ago, the loyalists went to George Square in Glasgow to say they were flying Union Jacks, they were throwing up Hitler salutes, and they actually stabbed someone, and they were kicking the shit out of other people.
Jesus.
Can you even comprehend what's going to happen in the event of a yes victory?
Terrorism.
Exactly.
It's normal in the UK, honestly.
If I could,
But
Which is why I've said this again and again and again. Organize.
if I could,
Prepare for the worst.
if I could shift the conversation slightly,
before you do that,
Yep.
what I find interesting that is probably going to be playing into this is that when it comes to quasi-military decisions, the Tories are incredibly bipolar when it comes to holding on to territory and rights. Like, on the one hand, you've got shit like the Falklands, where fucking government goes fucking mad and just sends everything to fucking shoot people, and then there's things like Iceland where they let themselves get bullied by a country whose navy literally consists of a fucking fishing boat with a machine gun mounted to it.
The thing with Iceland is that
Cod
that
Wars.
was a
I know
Cold
it
War.
was a strategic a strategic base. It was still a fucking humiliation. They were shot at by a fishing boat and retreated.
so
You know, the
so-
Anglos could just
Largest
invade Iceland.
navy in the world.
So I wanted to shift the conversation slightly to the other Celtic sort of nation in Ireland.
Celtic.
Celtic? Okay, yep. Sorry. Shifted
Celtic
to
is a football club.
One of the
shifted to
boys in
Ireland.
green.
I talk about the Good Friday Agreement, because if I understand correctly, Boris was. Why is
I
my
think he
dad mowing my
backpedaled
lawn?
on
Fuck's sake.
Don't think Boris did that.
Yeah. So Boris said he wanted a no-deal Brexit, which would mean a border right the way through
If I
Ireland.
remember correctly, at first he was like, hard border in Northern Ireland. After his defense advisors told him that is suicide. What the fuck are you doing? He backpedaled on that a little bit, sort of, not really. It, which in Tory speak usually means we're gonna at least pretend to be hard on them, unless we're gonna actually be hard on them. We haven't decided yet.
Hmm.
But
I'm gone.
but yeah, I think I saw a tweet on it, or on fucking a thread on Twitter where yeah, I don't think the United Kingdom is going to exist within the next 10 years. If they're lucky, that the English will still have Wales.
So
Yeah.
with a majority in Parliament, does that mean Boris could bring about any deal he wants?
Any deal. Any
Yeah,
deal.
any deal that the EU would agree to, which the EU
Yeah.
said that there is no reason to negotiate because there already has been like a 2-year period for negotiation,
Yeah.
and then the deal was made, so that is the deal, and now we just need to pass it. Which I think that I don't like that depends how stupid if Boris Johnson, because if he's like really like true,
How stupid
That's
Boris
the question,
Johnson
isn't
is.
it?
Oh boy.
That's the question,
Well,
isn't it?
is he a political opportunist, or is he like a true believer of all the shit that he has said over the
I
years?
think
That
he
is the question.
genuinely believes himself. I think he genuinely
Yeah.
believes the noxious gases that he produces out of his mouth.
Yeah, then he is going to
Yeah.
do. Then he's going to do the no deal and destroy the UK. But if he was actually like on an opportunist, he would just push the already made deal
Well, I think the
through.
bigger question is, are people that are standing behind him making the actual policies going to kick him in the ass hard enough? That's the real question.
No.
Prime Minister never makes like decisions on his own.
What happened with this election as well is that what happened was in the run up to the election, Boris Johnson deselected candidates who stood opposed to his Brexit vision. So basically, the whole Tory party is filled with far right wingers now at this point. So literally, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Boris just fucking goes for a hard deal, a hard exit. To be quite
Like
honest,
no deal. Yeah.
yeah, to be quite honest, and I think it is again, it is important that us as leftists are prepared to cope with this because, like, here's the thing: I would like to basically reach out to my comrades in the US as well and take this as a warning. Like, seriously, take this as a warning. Do not let optimism and idealism get the better of you. You need to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Please, for the love of God, prepare.
US comrades, the boogaloo is coming, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. basically.
Oh, baby.
I was gonna say
You're
you're not.
allowed to whine about it. That's an important part.
I was gonna say you're not ready for revolution. Revolution's ready for you.
Revolution,
And what we
no!
do is what you just can't do.
I'm waiting for it, man. I'm waiting for it because, quite frankly, there's only really one hope for us, and that is a complete degradation of all of the main capitalist nations
See,
and their inevitable collapse.
fun side note. The average price of a Toyota Hilux is about 30,000. So
For the fuck's sake, you and your fucking Toyota Hiluxes, will you calm down, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi?
We got another.
Bold of you to assume that I'm going to pay for them. I mean, what?
We got a couple of things in the chat. The first
No, no,
one from
no.
Skion of Braggy. Sorry.
Skiing of bragging.
Skin of Braggy says up the ra 26 plus 6 equals 1. I got one for you. 32 minus 6 equals the troubles.
Exactly.
And then we have a question. It says at Ishan Marshlands, there is also the thing about the NHS may be privatized. Is there any?
Oh yeah.
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 What's the go with the NHS being privatized? Is it
The,
legit? Is Boris
the
lying?
situation on the NHS is basically that once we leave the European Union, we are going to have to get new trade deals to get our fucking medicine. And you want to know what big fuck off country has offered to form a trade deal with us? You guessed it, the United Snakes of America. The Donald Trump has basically said that any trade deal between the US and the UK must include the NHS.
Oh fuck.
And that means American companies are going to get access to the NHS to whatever. And I think the specific reading of the document said every facet of the NHS needs to be open to investment by American companies, which means there is a very real possibility that in the next few years we are going to get landed with a Yankee-style healthcare system, and that will piss people off. I can guarantee you that.
Jesus Christ.
The American model of healthcare is going to be like, I think that there is going to be the dividing line. Now maybe this is just my own personal projection on the matter, but to be quite frank with you, in Australia, Australians will take a lot of things, right? We're a fucking reactionary Tory loving piece of shit country like the UK is.
Yeah.
I actually agree with you there, Peter. And that's specifically because if you look at let's take the analogy of the Great Depression. And I'm gonna preface this just with a question. What really caused the social upheaval and riots during the Great Depression? Who was it that was pushed to these riots and whatnot? Who?
Well, everybody, pretty much.
No, specifically, it was the people who were before the market crashes. Were members of the emerging middle class, because look at it like this: the rich after the market crash were usually still rich, like they had money. They continued to have money. They just had a bit less of it. The poor, well, the really poor weren't that affected by the market crashes. Well, they were all affected by it, but the people who were really fucked over were the people who had something to lose in that and lost everything in that. Now we can make an analogy here. Who really? My brain just died.
Who's, are you asking who is going to be most affected by a no deal Brexit?
I'm asking who is the most affected by the loss of, like the people who now, like, the reason that this political apathy in the Anglophone sphere is as bad as it is because all throughout the Cold War, the established lower middle class and central middle class has felt itself as untouchable to political change. No change that was significantly made in the past 60 to 70 years actually affected them. And that is why they're
I,
so utterly removed from like political processes. It's a problem here too, to a lesser
I
degree.
think that is the biggest thing. The middle class myth, if you want to
But
call it that.
but the thing is, something like healthcare becoming privatized. Like Americans are
That
used to it, but like, ooh,
Mhm.
ooh.
Eh, that's the
Um,
big thing. Like no one really, I think, in the developed side of the anglophone world, like will actually genuinely accept it. Like we'll
because
take a lot of things, but
that
not that.
that is what is causing the, as Dip and I like to put it, the restart of history. Like someone pressed the play button, and that play button is that political changes in the Western world are now affecting the broad population as a whole, and not just the poor. They're affecting everyone now, except the rich. But well,
The rich as
see,
well, but differently.
yeah. Here's the thing about the rich, right? Right now you have a lot of angry people and a few people with a lot of power. Now you remove all the social construct from that, you at that inflation, and the angrier people get, well, eventually all that power is going to become meaningless, and you're left with, well, just
with the ending of the Joker
yeah.
movie.
What you're left with is the idea, like, it's the fucking concept of it's no longer hundreds of people against this great, like, powerful man. It's just what happens if 100 angry people go ham on one guy. I'll
Yeah.
tell you what the answer is.
You
Mush.
get what you fucking deserve.
Yeah. Oof,
EML does
yeah.
not advocate violence.
Email does not
But
advocate.
Email does not advocate violence. Yeah. And that's the thing.
But
Like,
I think
it's not gonna happen. Like, I think that's the thing. That's the thing. The if the privatization of the NHS is gonna go through, which it is, now that the Tories have won, they're gonna do it. When it goes through, that will be the final nail. I think that will be the one thing that's gonna trigger a lot of
To
backlash
quote-
against the Tories.
To quote Lieutenant Commander Data, the Irish unification of 2024.
it's definitely gonna happen. It's gonna happen. But again, we need to be. I'm just gonna say it again and again and I prepare. Please, for the love of God, prepare. We can't keep affording to rely on electoral politics to save us. We need to be ready. We need to be ready for the worst case scenario. And as it stands, we put too much in people who, once you take off the rose-tinted glasses and you look back and you look at the wider population, you know they're never going to win. But we still keep hoping that they. Again,
I'll tell
American.
you a hard truth once you're finished.
The thing is, again, we're in late capitalism. We cannot reform. For the most part, there are so many different factors that are involved in turning society to a further left point of view. Electoral politics, and electoral politics are not one of them. I mean, they are one of them, but like not for the reasons that people are more easily shaped by hardships than they are by good times. Like
I
that
would
is a fact.
actually disagree with that, but not for the reasons that are relevant here, like right now.
Yeah.
Because all good times under capitalism are just simulations. It's still hardship, but
Yes.
my point is, that apathy I was describing earlier, like that runs so deep. Doesn't matter what you tell people.
Yeah,
They won't
exactly.
accept it. That they will not accept it. You can tell them what you want, and that applies to leftists as well. Like you can tell them, like, oh yeah, that guy is gonna come up with you. He's gonna punch you in the dick. It's like, no, yeah, but we can, tell them not to do that, or maybe restrain him. I'm telling you, he's gonna punch you in the dick. No, we can do things, and you can tell him what you want. You can show him images of him punching other people in the dick. They won't, like, they physically cannot cognitize it until they get punched in the dick.
Okay.
See, we were talking about intellectualism earlier. This is sort of my approach to make it more accessible. I call it the dick punch intellectualism. I'm a dick punch intellectual now.
I would also like to, like completely unrelated. I'm going to leave a little meme for you guys in a green room text.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think, unless you have migraine, I don't think ibuprofen is covered by the NHS.
Actually, well, that's the thing. Man's going to be swinging them fucking packs of paracetamol. Going to be making bills.
All right. I think we've said all we can on this topic. We should move on to the next one since we're slowly moving on to it anyway.
Well, I'd like to talk about something actually. I know I haven't gotten to actually bring it up because I was a bit through the wind the whole week. I had an exam and whatnot. There is a proposed change to some laws in Germany that regard the self-identification of trans people.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
I've taken like this draft is it's a very it regards birth certificates, right? And up until now, the proposed method was like these parliamentarians sit there and explain to us that there's there's nothing they can do, if but you weren't, born as that, blah blah blah. See, we in Austria have now found a very elegant solution. For example,
Sorry, I just have
if
to go
I
check
were
something. I'll be right back.
okay, if
Yeah.
I were to like legally transition, right, my birth certificate would say that I'm a woman assigned male at birth. Plain, simple, and it doesn't leave you with that fucking issue that a lot of my people have, where you'll show some office your document and they say, "Yeah, that's a fake," because yeah, that's a fake. But the changes that are being proposed to the German self-ID laws would essentially make it impossible to change your like um gender on a fucking Personalausweis. Well, it wouldn't make it impossible. It would make it very, very, very difficult. Which that's a fucking huge issue.
Yeah.
Like, I hope I don't need to explain why that's an issue. If you have someone that is very clearly like not the person on this image, look nothing like fucking douchebag on this fucking passport. But well, my government said I can't change that because that would be misleading. That is the actual reasoning behind these changes. They're on state level, by the way. Federal level is not yet being like discussed. Sorry, I'm very disjointed today. I had
That's okay.
fucking Excel.
Is this so? Is it just politicians being incompetent?
No, it is an actual law. I think they're willfully incompetent. Like, it's pretty clear that when you look at what they're saying and how it's worded, that it's like they're pretending to be incompetent as to be allowed to push their bigotry through. It's willful stupidity. And it's a fucking issue because it just makes administrative fucking work impossible to do as well. Anyone that see, this is the weird thing about Austria. We are a fucking conservative hellhole and a half outside the major cities. We are so bureaucratic, so old-fashioned in every single facet, but we have breached the veil. We are so bureaucratic that our bureaucracy in a lot of places genuinely transcends politics.
Austria
We
has achieved the dream of De Leonism and Porfirio Diaz of
Oh,
not
honestly,
much governance but much
I used to
administration.
work like deep in the fucking machinations of fucking Austrian bureaucracy. Um, there are sections so deeply managed by like committees and whatnot that it makes the fucking Soviet Union look like a fucking anarchic society. Not even gonna lie. Fucking everything is like directed by these specific rules and committees and exceptions to rules that are decided by other committees, which are then checked by a third committee, and decisions reached in those bureaucracies are usually fairly sound, believe it or not. Sometimes they're incompetent because our lawmakers are a bunch of racist farmers.
So is this an example of bourgeois bureaucracy and not just bourgeois democracy? If I'm saying those words right.
I don't know. Most bureaucrats don't know about that.
I
Most
don't think
bureaucrats
it's
that I've actually
bourgeois.
met are most bureaucrats, like people that work in the bureaucracy, what I mean by that, are comparable to a fucking office worker. Like, it's a white collar job, but it's a fairly low paying one. Like, we're basically glorified secretaries, I'll be honest with you. All of us. But, they are a lot more left leaning than what you would expect, is what I'm trying to say. Like, our entire office, sock dems are Greens. Which, yeah, fair. It's Vienna. Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
So
But
I have to get your guys' opinion on this just to see if they're shitposting or not. National Dangism says trans people being recognized under capitalism will make them complacent. Trans people should actively
Yeah.
support Nazism as accelerationism if they really want trans rights.
Okay.
That's a shit post.
How much fucking ketamine have you been snorting on that?
That's
I'll
Nick-
be honest with you. That there is fucking based. I'll be honest.
Let's
The
just put
one thing-
Galaxy brain out.
The one thing I will say is that you see this with rich gay white people. Once
I'm only
something
2 of those
becomes
things.
established,
Sorry.
once something become, you actually probably would be able to relate to what I'm about to say. Once it becomes so inescapable that it has to become recognized, that's when capitalism will attempt to assimilate it. I think you probably, like, especially for white gay men,
Oh yeah.
at least in America, there has been this sort of attempt to make things very mainstream, and
I mean, Americans
to
have
all of these
basically
fucking, like,
Americans have basically created white gay Reagan.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't you worry, guys. Don't you worry. Like every Pride month I go through the Macca's drive-through and the back of my fry boxes have a rainbow instead of the simple white, yellow and white. I mean,
Oh
like
god.
our
That's
liberation efforts have been fruitful, comrades. We can all go home. The gays are now safe. It's
You're-
fine.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
sure, they still murder us
Yeah,
everywhere,
Thea,
but
I mean,
you're exactly
yeah,
right.
but they're nice about it, guys. They're nice about it, guys. They're trying. They're putting in effort, guys. Come on, don't give
hush,
them
what are you
credit.
saying, TK?
You're exactly right in that rainbow capitalism exists because they
We
can
are-
they can make a profit off of the cis gay rich people because
That, and that, I think that's actually the lesser part.
It's a
what they're really
legitimizing
trying to
strategy.
Yeah, what they're really trying to capitalize on are the cardboard cutout cis straight white people who get a boner from being also progressive for
Yeah,
yeah.
buying products. Like, it's performative. Politics is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Politics is entirely performative, especially in the Anglophone sphere. Again,
You-
less so in, like, you can very, very much exemplify this. Like, look at a pride march in somewhere in America, and then look at a pride march in, say, Berlin, right?
Mm.
I'll tell you right now that about 10 to 15% of all flags that are flown on a Berlin Pride March are fucking anarchist flags,
Yeah.
red flags, have hammer and sickles on them, have slogans like capitalists will slaughter us like animals if we don't get them first.
I think a real tell is when a politician says, "No, it's cool. I support the LGBT plus community," and they only support the G, and they
And-
barely support the L, and they won't even acknowledge the B and T.
Like, I think that this is where I have such I feel very at home with a queer advocacy groups in Central Europe, mostly because they intertwine with things like the only reason that the Vienna Pride March is not even bigger is because half of the people that would go there usually hang out to harass the Nazi counter rally that happens every year and fucking like literally steal their like one time we forced the police to retreat and we literally robbed them.
Best.
Yeah.
Email
So
does
what
not
I am,
support
what I am,
violence or robbery or
so
harassment.
what I am going to say is like,
Oh, it exists here too, obviously.
yeah, it's.
Um,
I think when it comes to obviously like translates and like I would actually argue that along you know Austria and specifically being Vienna being very openly intersectional and like very
oh, I know.
pro
Vienna is an
LGBT, like,
exception too. It's a fucking
just
huge
just a
exception.
historical
Yeah.
like just historically it has that.
Vienna
But
is a very strange city.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. The thing is like again these things take time to develop, and like the thing is like in the
yeah.
UK for example, we had very fucking strict homophobia, like well, very systemic
Yeah.
homophobia.
Yeah.
Like I think it was section 28 or section 13. I forget what it was, but it's basically
28, section 13 is something about the military.
masks, isn't it?
Yeah,
Section
section 13 is
28
masks.
is section 28 is was basically a law that was in it was basically it was law in the UK uh, that basically said a teacher could be sacked for teaching that homosexuality was natural. We had
Yeah.
that. I think it was up until the late no, actually to the mid 90s. I think it was, if memory serves me correctly.
92, I think, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong
Yeah,
there. Don't quote me on that. But
the issue as well is like, in order to build like these radical spaces within LGBT movements, it's good to have a very well. It works to the advantage to have a very strong existing leftist history in the
yeah,
country as well, and I think that's kind of like the perfect amalgamation of factors that led to the LGBT movement in Vienna specifically
I
having a
think the
very radical.
Germans still did it better. I think the Germans still did it better
Mm.
than us because, um, as an advocacy group itself, because in Central Europe, which is something I think that, especially looking at, especially the Yanks out there, we've, you know, gotten ourselves legally accepted. We have the same-sex marriage, and still go out on the street and riot because they're still killing us. Like, we don't allow ourselves to be placated, and yeah, do that. That's that's the good thing. That I think that's one of the things that I think US groups ought to orient themselves a bit more on. Don't let yourself be placated.
The problem with like US group was that a lot of them started explicitly as a liberal groups that want like legal rights because US was like, especially after like the civil rights movement, the collective amnesia, which is kind of similar to like what happened after the Holocaust. Like, do you know where people started in the West talking about the Holocaust?
Yeah.
In in like 60s.
Over here, it was even worse. Like in Austria denied its involvement in the atrocities until
Yeah,
the
Renner,
1980s,
Renner
where we
pulled the
elected Kurt
hierarchy move.
Waldheim, who was in the SS.
Powerful.
Literally, literally, the only reason he won the election is because the entire rest of the world told us don't elect him, and we're like a fucking child sitting in front of the hot plate. I mean, the president doesn't have any power. He just sat on a chair for 4 years and then he died. But what it ripped open, and I think that's why it was not strictly a bad thing. What it ripped open was this conversation, and I think we have actually managed to do the most thorough uprooting of a myth about the Second World War. Like until the 80s, the government publicly proclaimed the victim theory, which proclaimed Austria as the first
First victim of
in
Nazism.
yeah, and following that change in the late 80s, we accept our role as collaborators, as SS members, as war criminals. Um, we accept the fact that we were a part of Germany and that we were in equal parts responsible for the
Hmm.
atrocities committed on the not just the Jewish minorities, but also well, of course, queer people, on Sinti and Roma, on
Basically,
uh,
everyone.
yeah, like
Let's be fair.
yeah,
Let's be fair. And
not
even
not
if
to
like
mention fucking political dissidents.
that's the thing, like these people are like who are
Yeah.
like nationalists. They will like say that like we are doing this for like the nation. When you look at it like the
Fuck, and
the objectively, if you like want to like do the best for
I
your
think,
people, you need to be against nationalism because
and I
nationalism
think
is like the
that is
most
why
hurtful.
say the US, right, especially hates like modern German and like modern German sort of self-presenting. The idea that you are responsible, or at least supposed to be responsible about the actions that your nation's committed, is terrifying to American right wingers.
It is.
Obviously, and liberals.
Because
It
I
is
think that would
like
that would require Americans admitting their country isn't the greatest country in the world, and they don't want to do that.
think of any other country in history. Is there any other country in history that has actively proclaimed, Jesus Christ, we were fucking horrible? Like, holy shit,
I
we were
want
actually
to say Australia, but as far as we get is sorry, mate, and then do
no,
nothing
but that's exactly
else.
what I'm talking about. It's like maybe you'll get a stale commitment of, oh yeah, I guess that wasn't right, but it's never the actual, yeah, our country would like literally committed genocide. Like we are horrible, and
What I
it's not
wanted
about guilt, right?
what I wanted to say come back from like this the diversion was that
Yeah,
like the what happened in the US after the civil rights movement is similar amnesia or like not
yeah,
talking about this culture of silence that
and
happened in like Europe after World War II, and that's the reason why like a lot of Americans rights movement for like immigrants and LGBTQ people and such are so legalistic is because they don't want to analyze the civil rights movement and the fact that like the things like the Black Panther Party and like all this violence that came into it, and it was like a struggle. It was like a the
yeah.
I'm
the
sorry. I'll
president
be
that
right. I'll be
finally
right back, guys. I gotta check on
okay
something. Sorry.
the
That's all right. I
president
mean,
that finally passed civil rights in the US, not sure which one was it, said we need to do something or the N-words and their allies will roll over us.
Yeah,
That was the reason
that
that the
was.
Americans
Was
are trying to hide
wasn't
from
that Lyndon B.
themselves.
Johnson who said that?
Yeah, that was Lyndon B. Johnson. He
Yeah,
said the
yeah,
N-word.
thought so.
He also said another thing like stalking, throwing,
Oh
fucking in the
yeah,
train.
yeah,
Like the Lyndon B. Johnson tapes are a little interesting. I
yeah.
recommend them as a source of fun and education.
I
Fun
mean,
and education.
talking about like that sort of thing. One thing I will say is that you sort of you talk about the Anglosphere and all that and how they behave and how they act and all that sort of thing. But the one thing that really gets me is you talk about all the progress that Central Europe has made, and then you go fast forward Australia, and then it's like Australia's progress on on gay and trans rights. Fucking poofters. Literally it. It's literally it.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
have
and I
no
want to
idea about
dispel a myth.
Australia.
I want to dispel a myth that fucking neo-fash love to spout. They love to claim that modern German culture is like based on a sort of creed of self-hatred. That's bullshit. Germans, Austrians don't hate their countries. That's ridiculous. But the thing is, we don't over here we don't equate our actual identities with the government. Like, it has nothing to do with the state. Like, you ask an American about America, he will tell you, like a patriot, let's say, and they will tell you about all the values that America espouts and whatnot. You ask an Austrian about Austria and what makes us what we are. We'll tell you about, we've got cool mountains, the food's nice, we like cake.
Also, yeah, we did something a while back, but everyone's pretty much gotten over it now.
Um, it is like,
Yeah, the description of the right wing in like Western Europe puts of like the Germans and the Austrian is very much not accurate when you are actually forced to like encounter Germans and Austrians in real life.
I am
I,
No
you're
offense.
not wrong.
I'm terribly sorry for constantly leaving the stream. My parents have bought a chicken to put in my backyard so that the bunny has a friend to play with, and
Nice.
they picked now as the perfect time to do it, and I'm like, what? No.
That's kind of a cock thing to do, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, no, because it's a chicken, not a rooster.
It's a hen.
I mean, I'd love to
imagine-
like carry on this base discussion about Germans and Austrians and in a modern context.
I'll finish it off. I'll just
No,
say-
I was just saying that because as I'm playing a game where I'm running through the Dutch countryside with my MP40, hey, look, some civilians.
no.
No.
What I
Oh,
would
no,
like to
not-
finish this off on is the if you ask an English nationalist or an American nationalist about their country, they will tell you about, like, you ask an American nationalist about America, they will tell you about the United States of America. They will tell you about the nation. You ask German about Germany, he'll tell you about the people that live there, what we're like, but
They
it
will
will
most likely
pretty
tell you
much
about
never be about the Federal Republic of Germany.
yeah, they will most likely tell you about like their part of the country, or
Yeah.
if they talk about government, they will tell you about like their federal republic.
In my experience, it's the same thing with the Scots.
It is like, again, you come to Scotland and like we'll fucking tell you like we're fucking Magians, we do enjoy a night out. We'll tell you that, like, again, we talk about the people, we talk about the history, we don't talk about fucking kings and fucking leaders and shit like that. We talk
It's-
about poets.
It's because America and the UK are like the only few countries that survive with the same government,
Yeah.
like the same nation
Yeah.
state, or like their nation has been the state nation from the beginning, and they have survived with the same government from like the beginning of 19th century.
And
Whereas,
that's like
sorry,
it's
go
like
on.
when people talk about British culture. The fuck is British culture? It is such a vague concept. What is British culture? I don't fucking know what it is.
West
But you
Not
can
saying
actually,
the-
you can. Here's
Not saying the Blitz should have worked, but
I'm just saying the Brits, like Britain has no culture. America has no culture. Scotland has a culture. Ireland has a culture. Wales has a culture. The different states in the US have a culture.
The different areas,
honestly-
the different areas have cultures and the different people
Yeah.
that live there.
but
US is simply too big to be.
and too
It's like the so-
disparate. Like,
yeah.
they have so many different backgrounds. Like,
They have they have like, when you look at it economically and like logistically, they have like 5 economic zones. They could be like 5 countries.
and they have so completely different history. Like, fucking look at fucking, you've got New England.
All right.
Take that and compare that to fucking New Orleans.
New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe we could talk
Yeah.
about this for hours, perhaps. That's a good point to move on to the next topic.
Which is the next topic?
Riots, I think.
We said all we need to about that?
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
So-
Yeah.
Okay. So just before we move on, I want to remind everyone to like and subscribe.
Be right back.
And there is a donation link in the description. I remembered to put it in. Be sure to donate through that link. Not only does it actually show up in our PayPal, there seems to be some kind of problem with YouTube Super Chat. Remember to use the donation link. When you do donate, your name comes up on the stream. Comrade John has donated $95 to the cause. Thank you, example John. Now, there is a certain aspect to the Chilean protests that I think we should talk about, and it sort of goes into what we've been talking about previously. In that, in the article listed, it says the Chileans are protesting not just for a change in government, but a new socio-economic order. There are people, not just in Chile, but all across Latin America, and they're asking for a change in government, to get rid of the government that they have, and then to replace it not with a similar government, but a completely new one. They're rejecting. They're rejecting. As a friend of mine, Smiley, would say, they're rejecting neoliberalism, and finally trying to embrace, just a teeny tiny bit of socialism. And I think you can also see this in people my age, or the the millennials, who are actively rejecting capitalism because they've had enough of it. So essentially, my question is what we are seeing in Chile going to be the future of mass movements, like a rejection of the status quo to replace it with something completely new?
I fucking hope so.
Yeah, it would be
fucking
nice.
hope so. Like, because that's the thing is that I think we can kind of we can make an analysis that totalitarianism breeds these. And here's the thing: when I say totalitarianism, I don't necessarily just mean the totality of the state and totalitarianism as we know it, but the totalitarianism of capitalism, and that's going to be coming to the UK very shortly. And hope there can be a new breed of movement that comes out of that. Seeing as how Corbyn's going to be on his fucking way out and Labour's going to die, and when I'm saying die, I don't mean the party's literally going to become irrelevant. I mean it's literally just it's never going to get a majority. So once people begin to see that avenue is closed off and it's never going to be opened again, they will begin to look somewhere else. And the bad thing is, and I've thought about this, and it's a really painful realization. People in this country and in America are going to have to experience absolute fucking barbarity, the final stage of capitalism. They're going to have to experience that to the fullest before they begin demanding for the change to the status quo. They need to realize that there is no one going to save them but themselves, because historically in Britain we've felt, in America we felt like really lazy, we thought ourselves like so far removed from politics, and again, class solidarity, building a movement. Oh, those days are long dead, and the only thing that can really bring those back is when this final stage of capitalism runs its course, when we begin to see more and more shocking things happening every fucking day. It's a terrifying thing to admit, but we need to be realistic about it.
Would you say?
I hope it.
Sorry. Would you say that the protesters in Chile and Iraq and France and so on and so forth, and so on, yes, would you say that they have had enough and have experienced the totality of capitalism already, and that's why they're calling for a complete change of the status quo?
Honestly, I'd say that's part of it. I'd say that's part of it, because again, the Chileans know what it's like to be under a dictatorship. They know what it's like to be under neoliberalism. They fucking saw some of the most brutal neoliberal policies ever, and they are beginning to see that being reenacted, and because they've seen it the first time, they don't want it happening again. And I think the same could be said for why the German and Central European left also has that really strong history, because they don't want to go back to the parts of it.
We've seen the Cold War. Fuck the Cold War.
Yeah.
Like that's our take on it, and because people like to remember, old people, boomers like to remember the 60s and 70s very fondly. I think the 70s were a genuinely decent period in Austria, but we're a strange place because essentially we circumvented the oil crisis by buying gas from the Soviets and selling it to the Germans at egregious prices and funneling that inflated money into the economy.
The
Like,
Austrian happy merchant.
dude, we literally funded our country's modernization on a pyramid scheme based on scamming the Germans. I'm not even kidding you. We bought cheap gas from the Soviets and
Scamming the Germans is perfectly viable. I approve of it.
No, but what I wanted to say is, talking about Iraq. How often have the Iraqi people been told by foreign occupiers that kicked out whatever, well, that instated and supported whatever brutal fucking dictatorship suited them right now? How often have they been told by the Brits, the Americans, the French, etc.? Now it's gonna come. The grace of modernity is going to come upon you. But
All I ever
these
came is
benefits
Chinese.
that were espoused about the capitalist West never seemed to arrive in their nations.
All ever arrived was the Chinese buying all the oil and then fucking off to China, doing their own pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Basically.
No, but like because they know they've seen only the ugly face of capitalism because the mask. The mask never stuck. Like this friendly mask that friendly capitalism that it can exist in the West cannot function in a place that doesn't have this like high amount of complacency. Like you can do just about anything to the English, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
You can do just about anything to them and they'll accept it. But
the thing
the
for
north of Iraq isn't accepting a lot of things these days.
the thing with the Iraqis is that for them, like in Iraq, the happy mask of capitalism was Baathism, which was like we have secularism, we have socialism, but it's like a fucking it's like Stalinism.
Secularism.
It's basically Nazbol.
Yeah, and they were secular, except they were
ethno-nationalist.
Yeah, and made some very interesting distinctions and discriminations against the Shia minority because
because Iran and such.
That's still my favorite tidbit about the fucking Iran-Iraq war, is that Saddam Hussein thought that there was this area in western Iran that was majority Arab, and he thought that they would like revolt against the Iranian masters when he rolled in with his tanks, not counting for the fact that like these people, they were Arabs, but they were also Shia. So when he rolled in with his tanks and tried to push out the fucking Iranians, he was fucking brutally attacked by the locals.
So
because he didn't. Yeah.
So how much does history play into how much a society, because we live in a society, will reject the status quo? Because
basically someplace.
Yeah, because in France, someone farts too heavily and they riot. And in Chile specifically, as you said, they saw some of the worst, most brutal neoliberalism, and they don't want to do it again. But in the UK, in the US, and Australia, it's like, oh man, I hate that thing. If only there was something I could do. So yeah, so if history does play a large role into it, how do we work around that problem?
The thing is that like in some places, in some part of the world, like Chile and Iraq, people are just so black pilled that they have like no illusions of like this will work. We just need to pull through. So they are like, fuck it, might as well. While in the places like France, they are so the idea of change is just like so. I would say like acceptable that they have like no problem demanding it.
I
I'm
don't.
just-
Yep, go ahead, Crypto. You first.
I was actually just going to say, guys, I am going to jump off because it is around about this time recently that my internet has died. So I'm going to dive off just before my fucking internet crashes. But allow me to say first and foremost, it's a fucking pleasure to be back, and hopefully we can have some more discussions on this. And ladies, gentlemen, friends, comrades, Mohara, prepare for the fucking revolution because it's ready for you, regardless of whether or not you're ready for it. So get fucking ready for it because it's coming hard and fast.
Thank you
I
for coming
will
on.
see you guys. Fiskal Maha and Chiri Andrasta.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on, Crypto. It was good to have you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a great day, my friends.
Also, another thing to like note is that there is a thing in the US and the UK that isn't much a thing in like Chile or Iraq, which is the immigrants.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the immigrant as a class, it's a really new thing that came in like the 60s and 70s, and it is
Yeah.
basically the result of it's the it's the basically the sect the like the category of colonial subject was removed because of decolonization. So a new category was created, which is the immigrant, and the immigrant works. It's like this is kind of like I am not third wordist. I think people know that, but this is what I'm saying. I think it's clear is to be seen. The immigrant functions as some as like a as like a fake class, as like the idea of the immigrant functions as a class that can be bit that can be used against not really against that can be used against the workers' solidarity basically, because the idea of the immigrant is that this is someone who is not part of the working class. This is someone additional that can be exploited more and then blamed for the shortcomings of capitalism, basically. Which is a thing that plays a role in the US and the UK and all these other, interestingly, all these other places that used to have colonial empires, but not much in like other places. Well, here also, but like that comes to like psychology, not much actual material reality. So like that plays a role because what people saw, like Crypto was talking about, like we will see the absolute barbarity, and people will wake up. No, people will not by themselves realize how like get like red pilled and realize how everything works. They will just blame the immigrants, like they used to blame, like they still do it. Like if you look at like the English intellectuals up until the 70s, there was like a race science, quote unquote, science journals that blamed the decline of the British might on the colonial empire. That is, that they believed that Britain was like investing too much into the non-whites, and that is bad because they are primitives and shit like that. So that will happen again, basically. That's my prediction. And that needs to be fought.
So there's like if there's an immigrant class, there's a scapegoat to blame instead of
Yeah.
the government and the system that people live in.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this works with any minority, but with the immigrants, it's like more used, I would say.
Okay.
Just look at the U.S. what did Trump did? Trump was basically, when his rhetoric was basically the same as Corbyn's, but instead of like blaming the millionaires,
Mm.
he was blaming the non-whites.
I think you're right. In the US, they will blame everything except their own system to the point.
Yeah, they have
to
they have
to,
already. Sorry, go on.
to the point where when a president wins the electoral college without getting a majority of the votes, they say, oh, they'll bring up any sort of excuse where they say, oh, but representation of like the bigger cities compared to out in the sticks, population sizes of California is equal to the rest of this country. What if it's blah blah blah? It's all debunkable and it's all can be proven wrong and debunked.
Because it's not meant to be taken seriously. This is one thing that people,
the US
oftentimes
is-
like liberals,
The US is not meant to be taken seriously.
the ideas behind it, the ideas that are spread to propagate it, are not meant to be. This is what libs especially don't understand about propaganda. The point of propaganda is not to make like the most rational, the most like high IQ argument and then convince people. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. Same with political debate. Like this is what we talked before the show.
I think you're right
It-
because I
the-
once
people like-
saw a liberal quoting the West Wing as not as historical fact in that President Bartlett existed, but that what President Bartlett did was actually in the Constitution in real life.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like nobody gives a shit about the Constitution. This is one thing that like Europeans are at built on more than Americans, because like we had so many constitutions and like movements
we
to get it.
understand something that the Americans especially don't understand is that what I think Europeans are a bit better at understanding is that the law will grow inadequate over time and will have to be adjusted.
Yeah,
Amendment actually means to amend in Europe, would you say?
I suppose that's one way to put it, yeah.
it's also
You
another
cannot
thing.
change the Second Amendment. Yes,
It's
you
also
can.
another thing that Europeans understand is that like what is written on a paper doesn't matter. Which you like, this is what comes back to like the yeah, we have gay marriage, congratulations, you are still a fucking hellhole.
Hmm.
Like just because something is written somewhere doesn't change the actual existing reality. This is like what happened in 1848 when all the liberals got PTFO'd by literally everyone, when the working classes that they tried to use to get the constitution realized that just because you get the constitution that doesn't actually do anything.
I think with I think you're right in that liberals would call it a day if Trump was impeached. They'd think, right,
Yeah.
Trump's out, the US is saved. There's nothing more to do. We can all go home.
Well, the liberals now actually are actively giving Trump more money for like his dipshit wars, his retarded economic policy, his like draconian internal policy. All this they agree with, but they just don't like Trump as a person because
Yeah.
he's like mean on Twitter.
You saw the same thing with Obama.
Ah.
Like, the fucking Republicans pretty much had the same foreign policy and basically identical internal policy to Obama.
Yeah.
They just didn't like him for some reason. I can't quite place my finger on why what well, for one it was party alignment, but the other one was. Can you guess? Königsmark, can you answer me the $1,000,000 question? Why did conservatives not
Disliked Barack Hussein Obama?
why? It was because he was black, but
No, it couldn't have been that.
I mean, to be
like
to be fair, they also disliked McCain because George Bush's campaign published like, how would you react if McCain had illegitimate black son? Just asking, not saying that he has, but like, how would you think about it? Think about it, and that's how McCain didn't become president. Funny thing.
Oh man, I'm gonna get cancelled for this, but like, lots of people in the US, when you say to them, like, hypothetically, what if in this notion, in this thing that does not exist, what if Obama was a Muslim? They turn to you and go, Obama was a Muslim? My God! Like, ugh.
I think that the problem with American politics, and I know this is going to be a bit of a branching statement, I think the biggest issue with American politics is that it carries with it an inherent tribalism, which is common in all politics, but it's very, very, very big in US politics.
Yes.
And it is literally entirely based on a popularity contest, realistically.
And the worst thing, it's tribalism for the plebs, but the people in it are like basically one family.
Yeah, that's it. Like, it is the same political and economic system. It's just do you want a progressive capitalist tyrant, or do you want a conservative capitalist tyrant?
Can I ask you a question, Peter?
Yeah, sure.
What is the fundamental difference between the American political system and feudalism?
Nothing.
Like, I'm talking about family relations here specifically, just to be clear.
Right.
I mean, in Europe, you get a pretty banging ass castle, but
No,
in feudalism, you at least have your own food.
I think the main reason that the Anglosphere is as shit at politics as it is, because other than the entire rest of Europe, they never murdered their monarchs.
Yeah.
It's healthy for a society. History has shown that the more monarchs that a society killed, the less complacent the people are. I think that literally is the reason that the French tend to riot a lot more than other peoples do. It's because, well, the idea that, like,
so
they shattered this idea of God, of fucking the king being God ordained, was shattered with the French Revolution. They carried that idea, took it to its logical conclusion that every idea that can be challenged is legitimate to be challenged. Like, it just the act of rebellion itself, what was the quote? The act of revolution is self-justifying. That's it. That's what it was.
Most of the political progress that was made in France has been through revolution. So I think I can understand why that at the drop of a hat they call a general strike and riot in the streets. I guess, would you guys say that that's similar in Latin America because of the Bolivarian
yes,
liberation, Simon Bolivar, who liberated Latin America, if I understand the history correctly, I think. and is that why we won't get that sort of progress in the Anglosphere because we don't have that history?
What actually changed during the American Revolution? Nothing. The governments that were in place after the
British
colonies had
government
seceded were the exact same governments of the states that had existed before.
Well, the British government was less confrontational and actively genocidal towards the native populations because of
that was one of the big catalysts of the fucking American Revolution, was that a lot of people were like, oh, let's go west and let me take all of this land, and then the British were like, yeah, we're kind of involved in a lot of wars with the French.
We need to get the natives on our side against the French.
Yeah, let's secure our holdings and be like, legitimize this land to these people. You know, got nothing to lose on that front. And then, like, the Americans were like, what do you mean I can't go out there and shoot millions of people? What kind of monster are you?
Also, another thing people talk about, like the Bolivarian thing, that's more like an icon, because what actually happened after the Bolivarian upswing of like, because he was like, he freed slaves and he did like social reforms and such stuff like that, was the long 19th century in Latin America is just like a one protracted moment, because it kind of it kind of mirrors Europe in a lot of ways. There is a lot of like revolts and like power struggles that are like violent. This is one thing that Americans don't realize, that politics is just violence,
Yeah.
because because they externalize the act of enacting violence on people from the
Yeah, I
from
think
the
what
policy decision making, which in Latin America never happened, because Latin America had like caudillos and all these like dictators for life, and like Porfirio Diaz, who ran on the campaign of abolishing consecutive elections and then
But
was elected 7 times in a row
Well, would you,
and
would
yeah,
stuff
you,
what
like
you
that.
have to understand, you have to understand about like something that really helped me rather understand history is that most of history is a series of confrontations
Mm.
in like one way or another. It doesn't always have to, you know, mean the same thing, but usually, um, I know I'm trying to paraphrase dialectics here. Shut up, but like, it's not like history isn't a direct line of events that have causality with each other. It is a series. It is like series of events that interact with each other in different ways. That, you know what I'm getting at. We're all fucking nerds here.
I think
Yeah.
it's the biggest issue that modern politics has is that you remember in the first opening sequence of Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers, the film, right?
yeah.
When they're in that sort of school. Despite the fashy overtones of that film, there is one critical point that he makes that is inherently true. Everything is backed up by society in terms of why do we have the structures and laws that we do in society. There is a reason why police units and the military are called law enforcement. By very definition, a structured society is maintained by the application of violence.
Jesus.
100%. It was 100%. The legitimacy of
The
that violence is
phrasing is
granted
very
by the people.
fascist, obviously, but um, I think a more general way to phrase it is that um, societies
Political
are
power
built by
comes from
people who are willing to shoot you in the face for trying to do stuff to them that they don't want you to do to them.
Yeah.
Political power flows through the barrel of a gun.
Yeah.
Combat liberalism, boys!
Okay.
Please, Don.
Since we're starting to quote Mao, do you think maybe we've said all we can about this topic?
Yes.
Yeah, true, but I'm always down to quote Mao all the time. Doesn't even matter.
I don't.
Can you quote Captain Benjamin Sisko for me?
Which one? There's lots of ones. Which
Like
one?
the time he
I don't-
like destroyed a planet.
Which time?
Oh god, there's
Well-
more than one. Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jesus.
but one of them was an atrocity against freedom fighters. The other were just war crimes, so that's fine.
Jesus fuck. Okay.
Yeah, like
All right. We're pulling. We're pulling.
Captain Sisko did nothing wrong.
We're pulling a Mike's to classroom and we're starting to talk about Star Trek, so I'm just gonna move us on straight to the last little topic I wanted to touch on. Just a
Shut
reminder.
up. Well, we will derail your stream, TK. It's too late.
Reminder for everyone to like and subscribe, and when you do subscribe, you get your name, Comrade Eastern Marshlands. Just subscribe down in the bottom left, and also remind everyone that there is a link to the T-shirts that are on Ancom Aesthetics. It's a T-shirt that says EML does not advocate violence. Because EML does not advocate violence, YouTube, please don't.
Allegedly.
Yeah, please don't fuck us over. Crypto, that's Crypto's store, in fact. He says it's all good. You can buy shirts from him. He also has other shirts there. Very good shirts that I highly recommend.
Yeah, they are really comfy.
Oh yeah. So the last little topic.
I have mine on right now.
Yeah, the last little topic that I wanted to touch on is YouTube and basically how shit it's getting. One of the reasons why we have to say EML does not advocate violence is because if we don't, we'll get fucked over. Essentially, we'll have our channel shut down. And in fact, I've been checking. This live stream as well is already demonetized. And we
Now, you officially, because it would be illegal, YouTube has to claim that blacklists don't exist.
yeah. Yeah.
But obviously they do.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, we are on some kind of blacklist where
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. I'm also looking at this thing and it says we've made changes to our harassment policy, so we have to be really careful if we talk about
what?
harassment.
Okay. Talking about fucking that, on fucking Twitter now, you can no longer report someone for fucking hate speech unless it directly targets you specifically.
Yeah.
Now, someone's saying the Holocaust was justified. Nah, that's fine. That's fine.
It doesn't.
I mean, it's probably
doesn't affect you
unless you're in
directly.
Germany, because then it's illegal, obviously.
Yeah.
But no, that's fine. But
Yeah, one of the bigger things that's gonna screw over a lot of creators and just general YouTube users is the FTC enforcing COPPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, onto YouTube, which meant that we had to designate Eastern Marshlands as adult content. And this all culminates in a question from OnlyBro505 who says, "What are your thoughts on the YouTube walkout that the breadtubers did?" And my thoughts
I
are,
think it's
yeah, it's
My thoughts are what?
I've never seen, like, I know what it was, but I've never seen a fucking campaign organized so clumsily and without any sort of inspiration behind it.
yeah.
I mean, I didn't do it. I didn't pay any attention to it whatsoever.
It's like-
Listen, there is StarCraft commentaries coming out, and I need to watch them now because I need to know the meta.
It's
Like-
YouTube is so ingrained into society because whenever a meme video is shared, it's a YouTube link that's being shared. YouTube is the platform for spreading content because we're talking to our fans right now through YouTube. But if YouTube wanted to screw us over, they absolutely can. And there isn't much we can actually do. Although,
Well,
I will mention and ask you guys your opinion on the Slingshot channel guy, Jorg Sprav. I'm not pronouncing his name correctly. He's teamed up with Ig Metall in Germany to create the YouTubers
the
Union.
YouTubers Union, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd need to actually mass organize it, but if you could
Yeah.
get just one of the huge channels involved, like the really big
Like
ones, the one that
PewDiePie.
with 10 million plus subscribers. Now, stupid example. What's a
PewDiePie's
good one?
never gonna do it.
What's a good
Yeah.
example?
Like
Uh,
people that do like playthroughs have like
yeah.
millions of views, or people that do like funny music stuff, or the hydraulic press channel, or like something like that that is like funny and has fuck ton of
But
views.
my point is, you get that off the ground once, and you have set a precedent because um, it's a free platform. You can't exactly enforce it because we're not employees. All right.
Mm.
Um, like of course you could change the rules, which they are going to obviously do, but that's just going to fuel the fire. I think it would be a good idea. My question is it going to get off the ground?
I hope so, because otherwise they will just keep changing the rules in the hope that it will never get off, and that will just make YouTube progressively more and more terrible until it just
I
fucks
agree.
itself into oblivion.
Hmm.
Because let's be fair, like all these people that always talk about like it's the private property, the owner. Just look at the way anything online has been run by its owners, and tell me that like private property is effective way of organizing anything. Look, just anything on the internet that has been run as a private company has been run to shit.
Hmm.
YouTube has basically trying to run itself to the ground. Twitter is trying to like make itself unusable. And
I think my favorite moment was YouTube Rewind last year.
Are you talking about the
the
one?
most disliked video ever.
Oh god, Jesus Christ! Yeah, I think a lot of people will agree and point out that that might be the jump the shark moment, in that it's only downhill from here, and in like 5 to 10 years, YouTube will actually have to shut down.
I mean, YouTube
Nah.
never makes profit anymore. It's just Google's PR stunt basically. It's an internet infrastructure that is provided by privatized and provided by Google at like a loss, because if they shut it down, like so much of the internet will be disrupted for other people that they need to maintain it.
We
Hmm.
should
It's like
march to Silicon Valley and occupy it.
it's like having a private
No,
road
that's
to
not a
your
joke.
mine.
Nationalize
Like-
YouTube.
If
No, work
See-
it on top YouTube.
this, I think no, I'm fucking serious. If we ever wanted to get any sort of like big insurrection off the ground, what we gotta do is we gotta gather our forces and we gotta fucking occupy Google.
Yeah, we need to take over the infrastructure, which is
doesn't advocate violence.
what happened during the wave of like revolutions in the 1920s in like Central Europe. One of the things that they did all the times was like, well, let's go to the Social Democratic Party's newspaper and take them over and then demand shit. And at this point, yeah,
Oh no, I'm talking about marching in there with a militia.
Jesus Christ.
yes, I am also talking about like they had guns.
Well, if
No, but what I'm talking about, think about how much of the world is actually relying on Google.
hmm,
You shut down
Mm.
Google, you shut down all infrastructure.
Basically, yeah. So
I think you're onto something.
So what you're saying, if we wanted to collapse the world economy,
Nuke Silicon Valley. Okay. So in
It would knock out all major international satellite communication for upwards of a month.
I've got a slightly different question, in that we're not
BRB.
we're not employees of YouTube. We're seen more as customers by YouTube. So in terms of what can customers do to protest against YouTube, what can we do apart from marching into Silicon Valley and burning it to the fucking ground?
we are not even customers. I would say that like people who are like on YouTube and who are like content creators, they are basically YouTube sharecroppers
Jesus.
when you think about it. And
you see,
those
the
are
thing
the
is,
people that will be fucked all over the most by YouTube fucking itself to the ground. the people that are not big enough to like push themselves into the mainstream, but are still big enough to like live off YouTube.
Hmm.
They are basically YouTube sharecroppers because they
Well-
are using their infrastructure to make their living and are completely dependent on them. And YouTube is extracting value out of the people that they bring in. What can we as watchers do? Not much. Basically.
The thing is, I'm a small channel, so I'm a small channel, one-man operation. Furthermore, I'm an anituber, so I can't really monetize any of my stuff, no matter what I do.
Hmm.
I'm in this for the fun of it. Actually, no, I'm in it for two things. I'm in it for the fun, and I'm in it for the fame. Really. I like the feeling of people going, "Hey, you're that dude."
Subscribe to Positus Pac-Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally, yeah. I'm in it for the fun of it, and I'm in it for, being recognized as someone who makes people laugh and who likes Japanese cartoons. And also subtly, I can admit this to you guys, subtly spreading communist propaganda. But that's all I'm in it for. I made a strict pledge to myself that I wouldn't make a Patreon or anything unless I got to the point where it was like properly going to be a thing. Like if I got to the point where I've got like 40,000 subscribers and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm an actual YouTuber now. I should probably set one of these up just to see,
Well,
just so I can devote more time to it.
here's how the COPPA ruling can fuck you over. Now, there's speculation that the FTC will periodically sweep through YouTube to try to find channels that are set to adult content that have children's content on them. And in the
How do you define any of this?
I don't know. It's a lot of it is just
What
fucking-
even is children's content?
Well, it's defined
Define.
None
as
of
like
this
cute
makes
looking,
sense.
colorful characters, and sometimes there's things that say childish voices. So
Oh, I'm fucking done, aren't
yeah,
I?
so to scan all of YouTube, you have to use bots. So the bots will be looking for bright and colorful looking color palettes, essentially, cartoons. So they'll come across Pac-Man's fucking videos and say, "Oh, look at this colorful video. There's children's content here, but it's set to adult." And
Right.
it's not. I can't tell if either Pac-Man or YouTube will be fined, but the fine is set at $48,000.
Here's the thing. It shows like this is what American lawmakers have been struggling with for decades and will continue to struggle with till they fall or the internet falls. It's the fact that the internet is unenforceable. It is the Wild West. Like, you can try as hard as you want. These sort of things are not something you can look over and control. It's just not feasible in any way, shape, or form.
I know it sounds like a really old Bolshevik claim and a really sort of tired meme. But honestly, part of me just wonders what would have happened if the likes of Lenin and Trotsky and shit had access to this tool. Because quite frankly, the internet is literally the most revolutionary technological advancement in human history. Really is. It is the most important.
Mm.
Because now, organization between people can now cover the entire globe in a matter of seconds.
It is the modern
And-
printing press, in essence.
Yeah, and that means that to quote the somewhat edgy film V for Vendetta, what we have here is not a system, not people, but we have an idea, and you cannot kill an idea.
Yeah. Okay.
And the internet gives ideas far more strength than it has any right to have.
Right. I'm not feeling like so I'll head off in a moment. But one thing I want to end off with is a hopeful note because I like ending off things off on a hopeful note. Even if theoretically our cause would fail and all communist literature and whatnot disappears off the face of the earth, humans revolt a lot. Humans don't like authority. Humans don't like to be controlled by forces they feel unrepresented by. Even if all of our ideas become lost to history, the same ideas are going to crop up again. Like, as long as the state and in itself exists, there will be dissidence against it. There will be revolt against.
Read Blessed by the Flame.
Yeah.
Basically.
With that, I shall go head off to bed, I think.
Good night.
Thank you for coming on, Theo.
Yo.
Yeah, thank you. Sleep comfy.
I think maybe that might be a
We
good
should
point
add
to
as well.
wrap this whole thing up. Unless got some last words on the YouTube debacle.
Everything on the internet is a proof that like private, as technology develops, private ownership becomes absolutely unsustainable. That's my take, and that's all I have to say.
Pac-Man, any
Any-
last words before the great algorithm deletes your channel? Pac-Man?
Pac-Man died.
Oh no. The FTC got to him early. Oh shit. Okay, I think he'll be back in a second. But I think that's a good point to wrap this whole thing up. So I want to give a special thanks to everyone in the chat for joining us, and I want to give a special thanks to Königsmark, Positus Pac-Man, Theo, Crypto, and I think there was someone else I can't remember, but thank you to them. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and to join us. I believe we'll be having another stream next week, so we will catch you then. So, good night, everybody.